Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week we're looking at Bible Sunday, and for the Rural Challenge I wanted to think about something which I found quite shocking when I first started rural ministry, but I understand some of the reasons behind it a bit now. Sometimes when you go to very small rural church buildings, they do not have a copy of the Bible. They don't have a whole length copy of the Bible. Some don't have any at all. Some will only have a very damp and crinkled authorised version, but some will have no copy of the Bible at all. Now I realise that people don't spend their time all the time in those church buildings, but it is an important symbolic thing for me, I think. Some of you may be wondering, well, how do they read for the services? Well, what they do is they often are emailed and then sent out to people or printed out and given out to people, and so they will just have the readings for the day. I guess it's a symbolic thing, but it worries me that when you do that, even if you have a red lectionary book and you're reading the bits that are set for the day, people aren't understanding the narrative arc of the Bible, of the story of God. People don't really appreciate that, even from such a simple thing of thinking, well, this reading's near the beginning and this reading's near the end, this reading's kind of roughly in the middle, before or after Psalms. So I think for me it's a really interesting question. It can be quite symbolic of how people interact with the Bible if there isn't a modern language copy of the Bible in a church building. What does it say? What does it say to our regular congregations, and what does it say to the people who come occasionally, or if your church building is open, the people who come to visit? That if there isn't a copy of the Bible there, what does that say about how we value this big narrative arc of the Bible? Interesting. Maybe you should think about that in your own church building. Maybe you have lots, but maybe there is a building near you where people gather for worship where there isn't one at all. Something to think about. This week is Bible Sunday, and in Thought for the Week we're going to be thinking about the Bible passage set for this week, in particular a bit of the Gospel, which is from Luke chapter 4, where Jesus is doing the things that we kind of do on a Sunday. He's choosing a Bible passage, he's reading out the Bible passage, and then he's talking to people about it, and he's saying, well, this is a passage of prophecy from Isaiah, and he says, this is what matters to you about this passage today. This is what's important for you about this passage as I'm here reading this passage, as we're listening to the passage. Now, it was very dramatic because Jesus was saying, it's me. I'm here. It's me. This passage is about me, what God is doing now. You need to pay attention to that. But in our church services, we read the Bible together and we look at what is happening in the Bible passage that is set, and then we think, well, how is that relevant to us today? What is that doing for us today? How should we be thinking about that? So, interesting questions. If you had to choose a favourite Bible passage, what would it be? If you had one chapter from the Bible, how would you choose which one? A bit like the special record on Desert Island in discs. What would be the one chapter of the Bible that you would take away with you to think about, to remember and reflect on? Of course, that's a really difficult question, and different Bible passages are special to us at different times in our life, different situations in our life, different things are happening in our life. I like to think about the Bible as it telling the story of humans and God. It tells the story of humans and God, the whole story of how God interacts with us as humans from the very beginning, to quite a kind of historical sort of time point for us, where we know lots of other things that were going on at the same time. So how do we think about it, and how do we think about it in its context, in its historical context, in the order in which it occurs in the Bible? One of the things that I did when one of my children was little is that I read through a children's storybook. It was actually the Lion First Bible. One story a night at bedtime. There are 62. And it was really good for me because it just put back in focus the order of the stories in the Bible. It goes from Genesis all the way through and includes a story on Revelation, and it encompasses the whole thing. It gave me the chance to go, oh, that story fits there in the histories, and maybe spend some time going back and interacting with that story. I would really commend that to you. If you've got access to a children's Bible that goes through chronologically, then yes, it's a good thing to study. The language might be simple, things might be condensed, but you can always then go back and look at the kind of translation that we have in a full Bible. One of my friends who was teaching me years ago was saying that he felt it was a real pity that we closed the canon when we did. He thought that we should have carried on writing down the Bible stories, that we should have carried on writing them down, and that we go on and on. And I could understand what he meant, because what he was trying to say was that it's not good that we are distanced by time from these stories of the early church, of God interacting with us as humans. It kind of gets historically misplaced for us, that we think, oh, well, that's a long time ago. But on the other hand, I'm with John, when John writes in John 21, he says, these are the stories that I've written down, the things about Jesus that I've written down. But if I wrote everything down, it would fill more books than it was possible to have in all the world. And so I think actually what we have is really useful, portable amount of scripture that we can read and understand and find out the story of God. One of the places where I worked, that was their kind of vision statement, that they felt that the church was there to be telling the story of God. And it is. It really is. I really liked that vision statement, that we were telling the story of God and humans. What does it mean for us to be telling the story of God and humans? So how will you be able to interact with the Bible this week? How will that work for you? Will you go to Bible study? Will you read the Bible by yourself? Will you follow morning prayer or daily prayer on the Church of England app? For that, there will be scripture there for you to read. How will that go for you? Because it's really important for us as Christians to be interacting with the story of God. How will that work for you this week? The Dibley moment of the week this week is something which happened to me when I was working in one of my villages, and I'd written something in the parish magazine which this person had read and interpreted that I didn't believe that the world was created in 6 24-hour periods, and she phoned me up to be very cross about it. I knew her quite well, so I listened to what she had to say, and I said to her, yeah, well, I believe that that part of the Bible is true, like poetry is true. So it's true in that way, and that's how we understand the creation in that point. But then she blustered a bit, and then I just said, but I could be wrong, but I don't think my salvation depends upon it. And then she didn't really know what to say. We are going to disagree about things and the way that we understand the Bible, but we just need to get on with being Christians and telling the story of God. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you can all be telling the story of God.